Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back to a time and place so quiet, so profoundly slow, that your smartphone would probably just give up and turn into a paperweight out of sheer boredom. We're heading to a medieval monastery, not for the praying or the illuminated manuscripts, but for something much sweeter. We're going to become the apprentice to a Benedictine monk who keeps bees. This is a world where the loudest sound is a bell, the most exciting part of the day is a swarm, and the entire economy runs on honey and wax. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive this. The diet is mostly bread and vegetables. The workday starts before sunrise, and your only entertainment is watching wax harden. It's the ultimate digital detox, forced upon you by an entire historical era. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support is what keeps this little corner of history calm and ad-free. While you're at it, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always fascinating to see where our sleepy journeys take us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sound of the fan fades, and in its place, you hear the wind. Not the frantic city wind that rattles windows, but a deep, ancient wind moving through the leaves of oak trees that were old even then. You've been walking for what feels like an eternity. The road, if you can call it that, has been a muddy suggestion of a path for the last few miles, winding through dense, misty forests and over rolling green hills. Your modern shoes are a disaster, and the thin jacket you wore feels foolishly inadequate against the damp chill of the English countryside. But then, you see it, rising from the landscape like a natural formation of gray stone, are the walls of the Abbey of St. Theomotheus. It doesn't loom or threaten, it simply is. The walls are thick, patched in places over the centuries, and draped with a thick blanket of dark green ivy. It looks less like a fortress and more like a place that has decided to gently withdraw from the rest of the world. As you draw closer, a bell begins to toll from a simple stone tower. It's not a clang, but a deep, resonant bong that seems to settle in your bones. Each toll is followed by a long, profound silence. That's the first thing you truly notice, the quiet. It's a physical presence, a weight in the air. The usual background noise of your life traffic notifications, the hum of electricity is gone. All that's left is the wind, that lonely bell, and the sound of your own breathing. You find the gatehouse, a heavy arched passage, closed by a door, made of oak planks thick enough to stop a charging bull. A simple rope hangs beside it. You pull it. Somewhere deep inside, another bell, much smaller and tinnier, jingles. You wait. A minute passes. Then another. You're about to pull the rope again when a small wooden hatch slides open in the door at eye level. Two very serious, very tired-looking eyes peer out at you. A voice, soft and raspy, asks your purpose in Latin. You, of course, don't speak a word of it, and just offer the name you were told to give, Brother Anselm. There's a pause. The eyes blink slowly. Then, the sound of a heavy wooden bar being lifted from the inside, a groan of old iron, and the massive door swings inward just enough for you to squeeze through. The world inside the walls is another universe. The air itself feels different, cleaner, and scented with a strange, pleasant mix of damp stone, wood smoke, and something else. Something sweet and vaguely floral. You are standing in a small courtyard. In front of you is the main church, simple and solid. To your right, a covered walkway with heavy stone arches surrounds a perfectly square garden. This is the cloister, the very heart of the monastery. A young Manuel, a boy, really, no older than 18 is, waiting for you. He's dressed in a simple, coarse brown woolen habit, tied at the waist with a leather belt. His head is shaved in the traditional tonsure, leaving a fringe of hair that makes him look perpetually surprised. He gives you a nervous little bow. "Welcome," he whispers. His voice is so quiet, you have to lean in to hear him. "I am Brother Michael. I am to take you to the apiarist, as he leads you across the courtyard, his sandals slapping softly on the stone flags. You realize just how committed these men are to their quiet life. He doesn't speak again. He just points at things: the refectory where they eat, the dormitory where they sleep, the scriptorium where light streams in through high windows. You learn that for most of the day, a profound silence is observed, a rule laid down by Saint Benedict himself nearly 1,000 years ago. It wasn't about being antisocial. It was about creating space for contemplation. Talking was reserved only for necessity, which, it seems, didn't include small talk with visitors. Your internal monologue, usually so loud, suddenly feels like shouting in a library. As you walk past an old stone archway leading out of the main cloister, you notice a peculiar carving in the keystone. It's a man's face, but his hair is a tangle of leaves and vines, and a small, mischievous-looking creature is perched on his shoulder. It looks far more pagan than Christian. You gesture to it, raising an eyebrow at Brother Michael. He just gives a slight, non-committal shrug, as if to say, "It's always been there." Historians still wonder just how much of the old, pre-Christian world lingered in these isolated communities, hiding in plain sight in the carvings and traditions, a gentle rebellion against rigid doctrine. Brother Michael leads you away from the main buildings, toward a walled-off section of the monastery grounds at the back. The path here is less worn, and the air grows sweeter, thick with the scent of blooming clover and thyme. And now you can hear it, very faintly at first, but growing stronger with every step. A low, gentle, and constant hum, the sound of thousands upon thousands of tiny wings, all working in unison. He points toward a small, stone building with a slate roof, nestled beside a sprawling orchard. "Brother Anselm," he whispers, and then, with another quick little bow, he turns and pads away, leaving you completely alone, standing at the edge of the secret, buzzing world of the monastery's bees. You take a deep, slow breath, the air thick and sweet, and walk toward the small stone building. The humming grows from a background note into a full-body vibration. It's a sound that feels alive, ancient, and industrious. It's the sound of a million tiny, focused lives, all pursuing a single, unified purpose. And for a moment, it's a little intimidating. It's the sound of a community that knows exactly what it's doing, and you are the awkward, clumsy outsider about to blunder in. The door to the stone building is a simple, weathered plank of wood, slightly ajar. You push it gently. It swings inward, without a sound, perfectly balanced on old iron hinges. The humming is louder in here, but it's joined by a profound, comforting warmth, and an almost overpowering scent of melted wax and honey. And there he is. He's not what you expected. There is no majestic, wise-looking abbot with a flowing white beard. Standing at a heavy wooden workbench is a man who seems to have been folded by time. He is small and bent, his back a permanent curve from decades of stooping over his work. His face is a roadmap of wrinkles, a testament to a long life spent squinting in the sun. And his skin is the color of old parchment. He is Brother Anselm. He turns his head slowly as you enter, and his eyes, a startlingly pale blue in his weathered face, lock onto yours. They are not sharp or judging, but calm and deeply patient, like the eyes of someone used to waiting for seasons to turn. He offers a slight nod, a silent greeting that is both a welcome and an instruction to remain quiet. He is wearing the same simple brown habit as Brother Michael, but his is stained with dark patches of propolis, the sticky resin bees use to seal their hives, and dotted with little flecks of wax. His hands, resting on the workbench, are gnarled and lumpy, like the roots of an old tree. Yet they move with a surprising, gentle grace as he works. Asterisk, the room is his sanctuary, a place of quiet, focused labor. Light filters in from a single, high window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the warm, fragrant air. This is the monastery's wax room. Along one wall, heavy canvas bags hang from hooks, dripping golden honey into clay pots below. On another, shelves are stacked with finished beeswax candles, smooth and pale yellow, their wicks perfectly trimmed. The place is a health and safety inspector's nightmare, but a sensory paradise. It smells of history, of sweetness, and of purpose. Asterisk, Brother Anselm watches you for a moment. He glances down at your clean, soft hands, then back up at your face. There's a flicker of something in his eyes, not disdain, but a simple, factual acknowledgement. You are from a different world, a world without calluses. He seems to understand this completely. He doesn't need to ask you a single question. Asterisk, without a word, he turns back to his workbench. He is slowly, methodically scraping the excess wax from a wooden frame using a small, specialized-looking knife. He moves with an economy of motion that is mesmerizing. Every scrape, every turn, is precise and unhurried. You soon realize that this is the first unspoken rule of the apiary. There are no sudden movements. Haste is the enemy of bees, and therefore, it is the enemy of Brother Anselm. Asterisk. You wake up not to an alarm, but to a bell. The same deep, resonant toll from the day before, calling the monks to matins, the first prayer of the day. It's a sound that seems to vibrate right through the thin straw mattress you're lying on. The room, a tiny, Spartan cell with a single slit of a window, is filled with a pale gray light. It is cold, a profound, penetrating cold that makes you want to burrow deeper into the coarse wool blanket. Your spine has a few complaints about the sleeping arrangements, but there's no time for that. Asterisk, a few moments later, there's a soft knock on your wooden door. It's Brother Anselm, a dark, stooped shape in the pre-dawn gloom. He doesn't say a word. He just holds up a lantern, its single flame casting long, dancing shadows on the stone walls, and gives a small, expectant jerk of his head. It's time. Asterisk, you pull on your clothes, the fabric stiff and cold, and follow him out into the cloister. The air is sharp and clean, smelling of damp earth and wet stone. Your breath mists in front of your face. The monastery is utterly silent, save for the faint, muffled sound of chanting coming from the chapel and the soft, rhythmic slap of Anselm's leather sandals on the flagstones. He moves with a purpose that belies his age. A slow but steady shuffle toward the back of the grounds. Asterisk, you pass the same archway with the strange, leafy carving, but in the dim, ethereal light of dawn, it looks even more mysterious. A secret held in the stone. You follow him through a small wooden gate and a high stone wall, the one you stood before yesterday. He closes it carefully behind you, the latch clicking softly into place. You are now inside the apiary garden, and it is breathtaking. It's not a garden in the modern sense. No perfectly manicured lawns or brightly colored plastic flamingos here. Instead, it's a square of earth, enclosed by those high walls, that feels both wild and perfectly ordered. It's a managed meadow, a carpet of clover, lavender, borage, and dozens of other herbs and wildflowers, all chosen for one purpose, to feed the bees. In the center stands a single, ancient apple tree, its branches twisted into gnarled, arthritic shapes. Everything is drenched in a heavy morning dew, sparkling like tiny diamonds in the low light. Mist clings to the ground, pooling in the low spots, making it feel as if you are walking on clouds. Asterisk, and then you see the hives. They are arranged in neat rows along the sunniest wall, the one facing south. They look like something from a storybook. They aren't the stacked, square wooden boxes you might imagine. These are skeps, traditional hives woven from golden straw and bound with strips of bramble. Each one is a beautiful, domed shape, like a giant, upside-down basket, with a small, dark opening near the bottom. They look organic, ancient, like a tiny, silent village waiting for the sun to rise. Asterisk. Most of the skeps are sitting on small wooden stools to keep them off the damp ground, but several are tucked into curious arched niches built directly into the stone wall. These are bee bowls, a wonderfully practical bit of medieval architecture. They sheltered the precious skeps from the worst of the wind and rain, a simple but effective innovation that kept the colonies warm and dry. Seeing them, you understand that this isn't just a hobby for ants. It's a serious, thoughtful science, refined over generations. Asterisk. Brother Anselm moves slowly down the row of skeps. He doesn't touch them. He just stops before each one, his head cocked, listening. He's checking on them the way a concerned landlord might check on his tenants, gauging the health and mood of each colony by its sound alone. The air is almost completely still, but the hum is there. A low, dormant thrum coming from within the straw walls. It's a sleepy sound, the collective murmur of tens of thousands of bees, clustered together for warmth, waiting. They're not morning people, or, more accurately, they're waiting for the sun to give them permission to start their day. Asterisk. Historians, still, puzzle over the dual purpose of these bee gardens. Was the high stone wall purely practical? To protect the valuable hives from thieves, a very real problem, as honey poaching was a serious crime in harsh winds? Or was there a deeper, theological symbolism at play? The enclosed garden, the hortus, was a powerful medieval symbol for the purity of the Virgin Mary, a little piece of Eden on earth. It's entirely possible that for the monks, this walled garden was both a fortress and a sanctuary, a place where the practical work of agriculture met the sacred, symbolic world of faith. Anselm is farming, yes, but he may also believe he is tending a little patch of heaven. Asterisk. He finishes his inspection and gestures for you to stand beside him, near the ancient apple tree, and then you wait. You stand in the profound silence, watching the eastern sky slowly shift from gray to a soft, pearly pink. The birds begin to sing, hesitant at first, then with more confidence. The world is waking up, and you are being forced to watch it happen at its own, unhurried pace. There is nothing to do, nothing to check, nothing to scroll through. There is only the cool air, the damp smell of the earth, and the slowly brightening sky. Asterisk. Then, the first ray of direct sunlight crests the high stone wall. It strikes the row of skeps like a spotlight. The light catches the dew on the straw, and for a fleeting moment, each hive is haloed in gold. Asterisk. The effect is instantaneous. The low, sleepy hum inside the skeps begins to change. It grows in volume and pitch, becoming more energetic, more purposeful. A few seconds later, the first scout emerges from the dark opening of a hive. She crawls out, cleans her antennae meticulously, and then, with a buzz, launches herself into the cool morning air. She is quickly followed by another, and another. Within minutes, the air in front of the skeps is filled with a swirling, dancing cloud of golden bees, their wings catching the new light as they begin their first foraging flights of the day. The gentle hum has become a vibrant, joyful roar. The day's work has begun. Asterisk. The sun is higher now, a warm, golden presence that has burned away the last of the mist. The air is electric with the activity of the bees. 1,000 tiny commuters heading out for the day's work. You could stand and watch this mesmerizing dance for hours, but Brother Anselm has other plans. He gives a soft grunt, a sound that, in his silent world, is the equivalent of a detailed 5-minute lecture and gestures for you to follow him back to the stone workshop. The show is over. Your training is about to get serious, or as serious as things get, in a place that operates on a geological timescale. Asterisk. Back inside the wax room. The air is even warmer now, thick with the scent of honey. Anselm shuffles over to a large, dark wooden chest in the corner, the kind of chest you'd expect to find pirate treasure in. He lifts the heavy lid with a soft groan of old wood, but inside, There is no gold or silver. There are tools. Your beekeeping starter kit. Asterisk, he pulls out the first item and places it on the workbench with a solid thump. It's a small round clay pot with a lid and a sort of spout, blackened with soot. It looks like a bizarre teapot designed by someone who had only ever had teapots described to them. This, he communicates with a series of slow, deliberate gestures, is the smoker. It's the single most important tool for any beekeeper. The medieval equivalent of a riot shield and a negotiator rolled into one. He opens it, showing you the chamber inside, still filled with the charred remains of its last use. Asterisk, he then points to a small pile of dried, crumbly material on the bench. It's rotten wood, punk wood, mixed with the herbs you were grinding yesterday. He takes a pinch and drops it into the pot. Then, using a flint and steel, he creates a spark that catches on a piece of dry tinder. He carefully coaxes the tinder into a flame and drops it into the pot, closing the lid. A few moments later, a thick, cool white smoke begins to puff gently from the spout. The smoke doesn't harm the bees. This is the critical, widely accepted historical fact of beekeeping. The smoke masks the bee's alarm pheromones. When a bee stings, it releases a chemical signal that smells a bit like bananas, telling all its sisters, danger. Attack this spot. The smoke essentially floods their sensory system, making it impossible to spread that message. It's the gentlest way to create mass confusion. A fragrant fog that encourages them to chill out and eat some honey, just in case they have to abandon the hive. Asterisk, Anselm sees you looking at the smoke with fascination. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touches the corners of his mouth. He understands. It's a kind of magic, and historians still debate whether medieval beekeepers like Anselm understood the chemical specifics, or if they just knew, through centuries of passed-down trial and error, that smoky bees are calm bees. Was it science, or was it superstition? For him, the distinction probably doesn't matter. It simply works. Asterisk, the next item he pulls from the chest is your protective gear, and it is underwhelming. There is no white jumpsuit, no high-tech gear. He hands you a simple, long-sleeved linen tunic, much like his own but cleaner, and then the veil. It's a wide-brimmed straw hat, from which hangs a cylinder of dark, coarsely woven fabric. He indicates you should put it on. You do. The world immediately becomes darker, the view obscured by the thick weave. He pulls the drawstring tight around your collar. It's hot, stuffy, and your peripheral vision is completely gone. You feel less like a beekeeper and more like a disgraced knight being forced to joust in a wicker basket. The mesh part, the bit you look through, is made of woven horsehair. It's stiff and scratchy, and the visibility is appalling. You follow Brother Anselm back out into the apiary garden, shuffling awkwardly in your veil. The bright sunlight is now a muted, diffused glare through the horsehair mesh, and the world has shrunk to a narrow, hazy cone of vision. The humming of the bees is louder, more immediate, and slightly muffled by the fabric around your ears. It's a disorienting sensory experience, like being a deep-sea diver exploring a very loud, very sunny coral reef. You feel a small bead of sweat trickle down your temple. It's already getting warm inside your wicker antolin and personal sauna. Asterisk, Anselm, of course, seems completely untroubled. He moves with his usual placid grace, a stooped, shadowy figure gliding through the dappled sunlight. You expect him to lead you directly to a hive, to begin the practical, hands-on lesson of opening a skep and facing the buzzing swarm within. You brace yourself for the inevitable chaos, the high-pitched hum of angry bees, the frantic puffing of smoke. Asterisk, but he does none of that. Instead, he leads you to a simple wooden bench placed under the shade of the old apple tree, a good 20 feet away from the nearest hive. He sits down with a soft sigh, placing his smoker and feather on the ground beside him. He pats the spot next to him on the bench. It's a clear instruction. Sit and wait. Asterisk. So you sit, and you wait, and you watch. Asterisk at first, it feels pointless. You are a fully equipped, if comically so, apprentice beekeeper, ready for action, and you're just sitting here. A minute stretches into 5. 5 minutes stretch into 10. The sun climbs higher. The bees continue their relentless work, oblivious to the two strange, veiled figures observing them from the shade. Your mind, accustomed to constant stimulation, starts to fidget. You mentally compose a to-do list. You wonder what's for lunch, probably bread. You try to remember the lyrics to a song you heard last week. Asterisk Anselm, beside you, is as still as a statue. He's not fidgeting. He's not bored. He is completely absorbed, his veiled head tilted slightly, watching the ceaseless activity in front of the hives. It slowly dawns on you that this is the lesson, the most important lesson of all. He's not teaching you how to do anything yet. He's teaching you how to see. Asterisk. He lifts a gnarled finger and points toward the small, dark entrance of one of the skeps. You squint, trying to focus your vision through the haze of the veil. At first, all you see is a chaotic blur of bees coming and going. But as you continue to watch, patterns begin to emerge from the chaos. Asterisk. You start to notice the foragers returning to the hive. Some are flying low and heavy, their movements lumbering. Anselm makes a small, satisfied sound. These are the successful ones, their tiny legs, laden with bulging yellow and orange baskets of pollen. This is a widely known fact, even today. The pollen sacs, or corbiculae, on a bee's hind legs. Seeing them filled is a clear, positive sign that the colony is thriving, finding ample food, and feeding its young. Asterisk. Then you see other bees, performing a strange, frantic little dance right on the doorstep of the hive. One bee waggles her abdomen furiously, running in a tight figure-8 pattern, while other bees crowd around her, touching her with their antennae. This is the famous waggle dance, the sophisticated and symbolic language bees use to tell their sisters the precise direction and distance to a new source of nectar. It's one of the most remarkable forms of communication in the animal kingdom. Anselm points to the dancing bee, then points up at the sun, then traces a line in the air toward a patch of blooming clover on the far side of the garden. He is translating for you. She is giving her sisters a solar-powered GPS coordinate. Asterisk. But there are other, more subtle communications happening. This is the quirky, lesser-known side of Beeswax. You see two bees at the entrance meet, briefly touching antennae. Is it a simple greeting? Or are they exchanging chemical information, tasting the nectar one has just brought back? You see a guard bee at the entrance, suddenly body slam another bee trying to enter. A robber from another hive, perhaps, trying to steal their hard-won honey. You see a bee being unceremoniously shoved out of the entrance, an undertaker bee, removing a dead sister from the hive to maintain hygiene. Asterisk. The hive, you realize, is not just a collection of insects. It's a city. It has traffic patterns, a complex economy, a communications network, sanitation workers, and a police force, and all of it is communicated through a language of dances, scents, and subtle movements that you are only just beginning to perceive. Asterisk. Historians still wonder how much of this intricate social structure medieval people truly understood. They didn't have modern observation hives with glass walls. Their knowledge came from sitting exactly where you are sitting now, for hours, days, years, simply watching the entrances. They saw the pollen coming in. They must have noticed the dances. Did they understand what it all meant? Or did they attribute it to something else entirely? The divine will of God, or a kind of beam? Perhaps Anselm doesn't see it as a complex system of instinctive behaviors. Perhaps he sees it as a divinely inspired monarchy, a perfect society ruled by a wise queen, a model for his own monastic community. Asterisk. The sun is now high overhead. The bell for sext, the midday prayer, tolls in the distance. You have been sitting on this bench for what must be 2 or 3 hours. You haven't moved. You haven't spoken. You haven't done a single thing. And yet, you have learned more in these few hours than you could have from any book. You've learned that the secret language of bees isn't something you can be taught in words. It's something you have to absorb through patience and stillness. Anselm gives a final, slow nod. The lesson, for today, is over. He gets up, and you follow, your mind buzzing almost as much as the hives in front of you. Asterisk, the next few days fall into a rhythm that is as predictable and comforting as the tolling of the monastery bells. Your life is now governed by the sun and the needs of the bees. The mornings are for observation, sitting on that bench under the apple tree, your vision slowly sharpening to the subtle dramas unfolding at the entrance to each hive. The afternoons, however, are for manual labor, but it's not the back-breaking, frantic work you might associate with farming. It is, like everything else here, slow, deliberate, and purposeful. Asterisk, today. Brother Anselm leads you not to the hives, but to the garden itself. He hands you a small, simple tula trowel with a wooden handle worn smooth by years of use. Your task for the afternoon is to work in the bees' garden sanctuary, the walled meadow that is their entire world and pantry. You are not just a beekeeper's apprentice. You realize you are also a bee-gardener. Asterisk, the work is gentle. You are not clearing vast fields or digging irrigation ditches. Instead, you are on your hands and knees, carefully tending to the existing plants and adding new ones. Anselm has a small collection of seedlings in clay pots, which he has been nurturing in a sunnier corner of the cloister. He shows you how to dig a small hole, gently loosen the roots of a young lavender plant, and settle it into the earth, patting the soil around it like you're tucking a child into bed. Asterisk, every plant in this garden has a purpose. This is a widely accepted historical fact about monastic gardens. They were intensely practical places, a combination of pharmacy, kitchen, and, in this case, apiary. There is no plant here grown simply for its beauty, though many of them are beautiful. The borage, with its fuzzy leaves and brilliant blue, star-shaped flowers, is a bee favorite, producing copious amounts of nectar. The thyme, growing in low, fragrant clumps, will not only feed the bees, but will also be harvested to season the monks' bland vegetable stews. The comfrey, with its drooping purple flowers, is another excellent source of nectar, and its leaves will be mashed into a poultice to treat bruises and sprains in the infirmary. Asterisk, Anselm moves through the garden with a quiet authority, checking on his plants. He shows you how to identify and remove the few weeds that have dared to sprout, and how to gently thin a patch of clover that has grown too thick. He communicates with gestures, pointing out a plant whose leaves are yellowing, indicating it needs more water from the nearby rain barrel. He has an intimate, personal relationship with this small patch of earth. He knows its moods, its damp spots, and its sunny corners. Asterisk, this leads you to a less quirky detail of medieval beekeeping: the concept of bee pasture. Monks like Anselm were expert botanists, not just by study, but by observation. They knew precisely which plants produced the best nectar, and which ones flowered at different times of the year, ensuring a continuous food supply for their colonies from early spring to late autumn. They were, in essence, curating a flavor profile for their honey. Honey made from clover is light and sweet. Honey from lavender has a delicate, floral aroma. Honey from the blossoms of the apple tree in the center of the garden will have a different taste entirely. Anselm is not just a honey producer. He is an artisan, a flavor architect, designing his final product from the ground up, starting with a single seed. Asterisk, you work your way down a row of herbs, your hands growing stained with soil, the scent of crushed mint and lemon balm rising into the warm air. A bee, heavy with pollen, lands on a borage flower right next to your hand. She is so close, you can see the individual hairs on her body, the delicate vein structure of her wings. She is completely unbothered by your presence. She is focused only on her task. In this garden, you are not an intruder. A week passes, then another. The rhythms of the monastery have become your own. You wake to the bell, you watch the bees, you tend the garden, you grind the herbs. You have fallen into a routine so quiet and predictable that the outside world, with its frantic pace and constant noise, feels like a strange and distant dream. You've even started to understand Brother Anselm's minimalist language of grunts, nods, and pointed fingers. A soft grunt with a slight upward inflection means well done. A sharp low grunt means stop. You're about to do something foolish. Today, however, the rhythm is broken. It starts in the late morning. During your usual observation session on the bench, the sun is high and warm, and the apiary is a hive of but the sound is different. The usual steady, industrious hum has been replaced by a new note, a high-pitched, frantic, almost hysterical roar. It's coming from one specific skep, the third one from the end. The air around it is thick with a swirling, chaotic vortex of bees. They aren't flying in their usual neat patterns. They are boiling out of the hive in a frantic, disorganized mass. Brother Anselm, who has been sitting in his usual meditative stillness, is suddenly alert. He leans forward, his body tense. He makes a low sound in his throat, a sound of deep concern. The colony is swarming. This is a perfectly natural, though dramatic, event. When a honeybee colony becomes too successful, too crowded, it decides to reproduce. The old queen, along with about half the worker bees, will leave the hive en masse to find a new home, leaving a new young queen to inherit the old one. It's a vital part of the bee's life cycle, but for the beekeeper, it's a moment of gentle crisis. A swarm represents the loss of half of your workforce and honey producers for that hive, unless, that is, you can capture it. Anselm is on his feet, moving faster than you've ever seen him move. He gestures urgently for you to follow, not to the workshop for your gear, but toward the monastery's kitchen garden. He's not panicking, he's focused, a general responding to a sudden, but expected, maneuver. He leads you to a small shed where the garden tools are kept, but he doesn't grab a shovel or a hoe. Instead, he grabs two large heavy iron skillets and a metal ladle. He thrusts one of the skillets and the ladle into your hands. He keeps the other skillet for himself. His instructions are a rapid series of gestures. He points to the swirling cloud of bees, which is now beginning to lift out of the apiary and drift toward the apple tree. Then he bangs the ladle against his skillet, creating a loud, rhythmic clang, clang, clang. He looks at you expectantly. You are to do the same. And so begins one of the strangest and most ancient rituals in beekeeping, the tanging. For centuries, it was believed that making a loud, discordant noise would cause a swarm to settle. You stand there, in the middle of a serene medieval monastery, banging a ladle against a frying pan like a deranged town crier, while an old monk does the same beside you. The racket is incredible, a cacophony of clanging metal that shatters the sacred silence of the abbey. You can see a few monks' heads poke out of windows in the dormitory, their faces a mixture of confusion and mild annoyance. The historical reason for this practice is a fascinating debate. The popular folklore, the quirky detail, was that the bees would mistake the noise for thunder, causing them to land and seek shelter from the impending storm. Another theory was that the noise simply confused the scout bees, disrupting their ability to communicate and lead the swarm away. The most likely, widely accepted explanation, however, has nothing to do with the bees at all. In medieval England, bees were valuable property. If your swarm left your land and settled on your neighbors, it legally became their property. The loud tanging was essentially a legal declaration. These bees are mine. I am following them. Don't you dare claim them. It was the medieval equivalent of a car alarm and a property deed, all in one. Historians still argue about how much of this was understood at the time. Did Anselm believe he was tricking the bees with fake thunder, or was he just following an ancient tradition to protect the monastery's assets? As you stand there, banging away, you suspect it's a bit of both. He's a practical man, but he also lives in a world steeped in tradition and symbolism. And incredibly, it seems to work. The swirling cloud of bees, which had been drifting higher, begins to coalesce. It slowly condenses around a low-hanging branch of the old apple tree. The roar of their wings softens slightly as they begin to land, crawling over one another, forming a single, pulsating teardrop-shaped cluster that grows larger and larger by the second. Within 10 minutes, the air is clear again. The swarm, a single living organism made of 30,000 individual bees, hangs from the branch, quiet and waiting. The queen is somewhere in the very center of that cluster, being protected by her loyal court. The tanging stops. The profound silence of the monastery rushes back in, seeming even deeper than before. Anselm sets his skillet down. The crisis phase is over. The recovery phase is about to begin. He gives you a quick, sharp nod. His version of a high five and heads back toward the workshop. This time, to retrieve the tools, you'll actually need to give these homeless travelers a new home. You follow, your ears ringing slightly, your heart still pounding from the gentle, noisy chaos of it all. The adrenaline from the tanging fades, replaced by a quiet sense of anticipation. Brother Anselm returns from the workshop, not with a skep, but with a collection of seemingly random items. He carries a large, clean linen sheet, a small wooden ladder, and a long pole with a hook on the end. He also has a pot filled with a sweet-smelling mixture. He dips a finger in, tastes it, and offers you some. It's honey, slightly watered down, and mixed with some of the lemon balm you were tending just days ago. This will be the welcome gift for the new colony. A housewarming present to entice them to stay. He props the ladder against the trunk of the old apple tree. The swarm hangs about 10 feet up, a dark, buzzing pendulum of bees, surprisingly calm now that they are settled. Anselm gestures to the linen sheet, and you help him spread it out on the ground, directly beneath the swarm. In the center of the sheet, he places a small, upturned, wooden box. This will be their temporary landing pad. Then he looks at you, and at a spare skep, sitting near the wall. This one is new. Its straw's still a bright, pale gold. He points to the skep, then to you. The meaning is clear. The swarm needs a new home, and you are going to be the one to provide it. But first, you must learn how that home is made. This is a pause in the action, a flashback in your training. Before you can house the bees, you must become an architect, a weaver, a builder of their new world. He leads you to a quiet, sheltered spot behind the workshop, a sort of open-air carport where bundles of straw are stacked, dry and protected from the rain. He sits down on a low stool and pulls a bundle of long, clean rye straw toward him. He also has a coil of what looks like thin, thorny Vinet's bramble, stripped of its leaves and split into flexible, tough strips. These are the only two materials needed, straw for the walls, and bramble for the stitches that hold it all together. And so begins the slow, meditative process of weaving a skep. It's a craft that requires no complex machinery, only patient, skilled hands. Anselm takes a thick hank of straw and begins to coil it, forming a small, tight circle, which will be the very top of the hive, using a sharpened piece of bone as a needle on. He pushes it through the coil and threads a strip of wet, pliable bramble through the hole, binding the straw together. Coil, bind, tighten. Coil, bind, tighten. This is the rhythm of the work. He hands the materials to you. Your first attempts are clumsy. The straw is stiff and uncooperative. The bramble strips are tough, and the thorns you thought were removed have a few stubborn remnants that prick your fingers. Your coil is loose and uneven, looking less like the start of a beautiful hive, and more like a sad, lopsided bird's nest. Anselm watches you, his face impassive. He doesn't criticize. He simply reaches over, and with a gentle adjustment of his gnarled fingers, corrects the tension of your coil, showing you how to overlap the straw just so. He demonstrates how to use your body, bracing the growing skep against your knees to keep the shape consistent. Asterisk, this is a profoundly ancient craft. For thousands of years, this was how bees were housed across Europe. The skep is an iconic image of beekeeping, but its design was also its greatest flaw, because the bees attached their comb directly to the inside walls of the skep. The only way to harvest the honey was to destroy the colony. This is a difficult historical fact. Beekeepers would drive the bees out, or suffocate them with sulfur fumes at the end of the season to get the wax and honey. It was a destructive, tragic cycle. Asterisk, however, Benedictine monks like Anselm were often at the forefront of developing more sustainable methods. One quirky, lesser-known innovation was the use of a wooden top bar or a smaller, secondary skep called an eek. By placing this on top, they could encourage the bees to store their surplus honey in an accessible area that could be harvested without killing the colony below. It was a small but compassionate step forward, a move away from destruction and toward husbandry. The skep you are making is a simple one, but the very act of making it connects you to this long history of human ingenuity and our evolving relationship with the natural world. Asterisk. You carry the newly woven skep, your lopsided masterpiece, back toward the apple tree. It feels light but strong in your hands, and it smells of dry straw and sunshine. The swarm is still there, a single living entity, hanging from the branch in a quiet, buzzing cluster. The air of gentle crisis from the tanging has completely dissipated, replaced by a deep, patient calm. The bees are waiting for their real estate agent, that's you, to show them their new home. Asterisk, Brother Anselm is already at the base of the tree, making final preparations. He has donned his veil, and he gestures for you to do the same. The world goes dark and hazy again. He hands you a long-sleeved tunic, and you pull it on over your clothes. He then takes the skep from you, and, using a small brush, paints a thin layer of the honey and lemon balm mixture around the inside of the entrance. It's an irresistible welcome mat, the bee equivalent of the smell of baking bread in a house for sale. Asterisk, Anselm gestures toward the ladder. It's your turn. You will stay on the ground, ready to assist. You feel a flutter of nervous energy. It's one thing to watch the bees from a distance. It's another thing entirely to climb a rickety wooden ladder and introduce yourself to 30,000 of them at once. Asterisk. You take a deep breath. The air inside your veil already warm and smelling of your own nervous perspiration, and begin to climb. The ladder creaks in protest. You hold the skep in one hand, your knuckles white. With each rung, the buzzing grows louder, more intimate, until it's a physical vibration you can feel in your chest. You are now eye level with the swarm. Asterisk, and it is one of the most beautiful and terrifying things you have ever seen. It's a single, perfect, teardrop shape, composed of a living, moving fabric of bees. They are clinging to each other, their bodies forming a dense, protective blanket around the queen hidden deep within. A few bees are flying lazily around the cluster, scouts or guards, but the vast majority are still. The collective energy is one of pure potential. A coiled spring waiting to be released. Asterisk, you remember Anselm's unspoken rule: no sudden movements. You move with the deliberate, syrupy slowness of a sloth. You position the skep directly underneath the swarm, holding it as steady as you can. Now comes the critical moment. Asterisk, you have two options. The first is to gently brush the bees into the skep. The second, more efficient option, is to give the branch a single, sharp, decisive jolt. Anselm, from the ground, points to the branch and makes a sharp, downward chopping motion with his hand. He's chosen efficiency. Asterisk, you take another deep breath. You reach up, grab the branch firmly with your free hand, and give it one hard shake. Asterisk, the effect is immediate and spectacular. The entire cluster of bees detaches from the branch and falls, like a single, living liquid, directly into the opening of the skep. A loud, unified roar erupts from them, a sound of pure surprise. For a split second, the air is a chaotic, swirling blizzard of bees. A few dozen land on your veil and your tunic, their tiny feet scrabbling for a grip. But they are not aggressive. They are simply confused, disoriented, their world literally turned upside. This is the widely accepted fact of swarming bees. They are at their most docile. They have gorged on honey before leaving the old hive, so their bellies are full, and they have no home, no young, and no honey stores to defend. They are refugees, not warriors. Asterisk, you hold the skep steady, and then the magic begins to happen. A few bees at the entrance of the skep begin to fan their wings, raising their abdomens in the air. This is nasonoving, a lesser-known and fascinating bee behavior. They are releasing a pheromone from a special gland, the Nasonov gland, which acts as a homing beacon. It's a scent that says, "This way, we've found it, this is home." Other bees pick up the signal and begin to do the same, creating a chemical chain reaction, a fragrant invitation to the rest of the scattered colony. Asterisk, within moments, the chaos subsides. The bees that were flying around begin to land on the skep, marching purposefully toward the entrance. Following the scent trail laid down by their sisters, the bees on your veil and tunic take off and join the procession. You are witnessing the birth of a new colony, the moment they collectively agree. Yes, this lopsided straw basket will be our castle. Asterisk, historians still debate the precise methods used for this delicate operation in the past. Did they always shake them in? Some illuminated manuscripts depict beekeepers gently sawing off the branch and carrying it to the new hive. Others suggest they would hold the skep over the swarm and drum on it, hoping the bees would be drawn upward by the vibrations. The method likely varied based on the situation and the temperament of the beekeeper. Anselm is a pragmatist. The shake was quickest. Asterisk, you wait on the ladder for a few more minutes, holding the now very heavy skep until most of the bees are inside. Then, slowly, carefully, you begin your descent. You step off the last rung in turn, presenting the hive to Anselm. He doesn't take it. He simply points to the linen sheet on the ground. You gently place the skep on the upturned box in the center of the sheet. Asterisk, your part in the harvest for. That is what this is. A harvest of bees is over. Now, you just have to wait for the last few stragglers to find their way home. You and Anselm retreat to your bench under the apple tree and watch as the last few hundred bees, who were out scouting or were just slow to get the memo, circle the branch where the swarm once was, find it empty, and then spiral down to join the growing hum of activity at the entrance to their new straw home. The first sticky, living honey harvest is complete. Asterisk, the rest of the day is spent in quiet observation. You and Brother Anselm sit on your bench, watching the new colony settle in. The bees, having accepted their new lodgings, immediately begin the monumental task of building a home. Scout bees issue from the entrance, taking orientation flights to memorize the location of their new hive. Other bees emerge, carrying tiny specks of debris, a stray piece of straw. A speck of dust acting as the world's most meticulous housekeepers. By late afternoon, a steady stream of foragers is already returning with pollen, proof that the colony's engine of industry has been restarted. They have moved in and started renovating on the same day. Asterisk, just before the evening bell, Anselm deems the move a success. He picks up the skep, which is now vibrating with a contented, productive hum. You hold the linen sheet by its corners, catching the few remaining bees that are clinging to the outside, and follow him as he carries the colony to its permanent new home, an empty bee bowl in the stone wall, a sheltered south-facing alcove that will protect it from the elements. He places it gently inside, a new house joining the quiet, humming village. Asterisk, the next day, you do not go to the apiary. Instead, Anselm leads you back to the stone workshop. The air inside is thick with the familiar, intoxicating scent of warm honey and wax. Today is not about the bees, but about what they create. It is time to process the actual honey harvest, the one taken from an established hive, a colony that Anselm had deemed strong enough to share its surplus. Asterisk, in the center of the room are several large, heavy slabs of honeycomb. Anselm had harvested them earlier in the week, before the swarm, from a skep that was destined for demolition at the end of the season. The comb is a miracle of engineering, a perfect hexagonal structure, but it's a mess of honey, pollen, and beeswax, all mixed together. Your job is to separate them. This is the sticky part. Asterisk, he leads you to a piece of equipment that looks wonderfully, almost comically, medieval. It's a large press, made from a massive screw of oak wood, set in a heavy timber frame. Below the screw is a sturdy wooden basin, with a small hole and a spout for the honey to run out. But you don't just put the comb in the press. First, it must be broken. Asterisk, Anselm lays a clean canvas cloth on the workbench and places a slab of honeycomb on it. He then simply takes his bare hands, his clean washed hands, and begins to crush it. He mashes the beautiful, perfect hexagons into a goopy, sticky, fragrant pulp. He gestures for you to do the same. You hesitate for a moment, then plunge your hands in. The sensation is bizarre and wonderful. The wax is soft and slightly warm, and the thick, golden honey oozes between your fingers. It's the most satisfying act of destruction you can imagine. Asterisk. Once the comb is thoroughly crushed into a slurry of wax and honey, you scoop the mess into a coarse horsehair bag. This is the widely accepted historical method for honey extraction before the invention of the modern centrifugal extractor. It was a messy, labor-intensive process, but effective. You hang the bag on a hook over a large earthenware pot, and a slow, steady trickle of pure, golden honey begins to drip out, gravity doing the initial work. This is called running the honey. Asterisk, after an hour or two, when the dripping has slowed, you take the heavy, saturated bag and place it in the press. Anselm shows you how to turn the huge wooden screw. It's hard work. You have to lean your whole body into it, and the wood groans in protest. But as you apply pressure, a fresh, steady stream of honey flows from the spout, thicker and richer than the first runnings. You have to work the press slowly, giving the honey time to escape the compressed wax. It's another lesson in the monastery's core philosophy. Patience yields sweeter results. Asterisk. The next morning, you return to the workshop to find that the sweet, floral scent of honey has been joined by a deeper, richer, almost smoky aroma. Brother Anselm is standing over a large cauldron, which is suspended over a low, carefully controlled fire in the corner hearth. The large pale-yellow cake of beeswax from the press is sitting on the workbench, and he is methodically breaking off chunks and dropping them into the cauldron, where they melt into a pool of liquid gold. Today, you are not a beekeeper or a honey press. You are a chandler, a maker of candles. The process begins with purification. The wax from the press, while beautiful, is still full of impurities, honey residue, bits of pollen, propolis, and other debris from the hive. Anselm shows you the simple but ingenious filtration system. After the wax is fully melted, he adds a bucket of clean rainwater to the cauldron. He gives the mixture a gentle stir with a long wooden paddle. The principle is simple. The wax is lighter than the water and will float, while the heavier, water-soluble impurities like honey will sink and dissolve into the water below. He lets the cauldron cool slowly overnight. By morning, the wax will have resilified into a clean, hard disc on top of a pot of murky, sweetened water. He will then break a hole in the wax, pour out the dirty water, which will be used to sweeten animal feed, because nothing is wasted, and remelt the purified wax. He will do this 2 or 3 times, until the final cake of wax is a pale, creamy, almost white color, and perfectly clean. This is the crucial, widely accepted historical process of rendering beeswax. It's what made beeswax candles so prized, their purity. They burned without the smoke, sputter, or foul smell of their cheaper cousins, tallow candles, which were made from rendered animal fat and often smelled faintly of cooking meat. While the first rendering is underway, Anselm directs your attention to the second key component of any candle, the wick. He pulls out a bundle of dried rushes and a spool of thin, raw cotton thread. He shows you how to carefully split the rush, revealing the soft, pithy core inside. This pith will be the wick for their everyday utility candles, but for the church candles, the sacred altar candles, they use cotton. He hands you the spool and a simple wooden frame. Your job for the next hour is to wind the cotton thread back and forth across the frame, creating dozens of lengths of wick, all perfectly taut and evenly spaced. It's another of the monastery's deceptively simple, meditative tasks, work that occupies the hands while freeing the mind. Once the wax is rendered to his satisfaction and the wicks are prepared, the actual candle making can begin. And here, you discover a quirky, lesser-known detail of the chandler's art. The 2 methods. The first is molding. Anselm has a set of molds made from tin, long, thin tubes clustered together, each with a tiny hole at the bottom. He shows you how to thread a wick through each tube, securing it at the bottom with a small wooden peg and pulling it taut at the top with a cross stick. He then carefully ladles the molten wax into the molds, a delicate process requiring a steady hand. He fills them to the very brim, and then you must wait for them to cool completely. The second method, and the one that requires the most skill, is dipping. This is reserved for the grandest of all candles, the Paschal candle that will be lit at Easter. For this, Anselm has a special, deep pot of molten wax. He takes a long, thick piece of cotton wick, ties it to a stick, and begins the slow, patient process of dipping it into the wax. He submerges it for a few seconds, pulls it out, and holds it in the air, allowing the thin layer of wax to cool and harden. Then he dips it again, and again, and again. Each dip adds a minuscule layer of new wax. It's a process that can take an entire day of patient, rhythmic work, building the candle layer by infinitesimal layer until it reaches the desired thickness. The result is a candle of unparalleled quality, its concentric layers ensuring a slow, even and perfect burn. Historians still debate the symbolic weight of these different methods. Was dipping seen as a more devotional act, the slow repetitive building of the candle mirroring the slow repetitive building of a spiritual life through prayer? Or was it simply the only way to create a candle of that size and quality? For Anselm, the distinction is probably irrelevant. The work itself is a form of prayer. His focus is absolute. As he dips the growing candle, his movements are as smooth and practiced as a ritual. He allows you to try your hand at dipping a smaller candle. Your first few attempts are clumsy. You leave it in the wax too long, and the previous layers melt off. You pull it out too quickly, and it drips all over the floor. You knock it against the side of the pot, creating an ugly lump. Anselm watches without comment, letting you learn from your own mistakes. Eventually, you fall into the rhythm of it. Dip, lift, cool, repeat. You watch as the thin, limp wick is transformed, layer by layer, into a straight, solid, and functional object. At the end of the day, the workshop is filled with finished candles. Some are still cooling in their molds. Others, made by you, hang in a slightly lumpy row from a wooden rack. And in the center of it all stands Anselm's masterpiece. The beginnings of the great Paschal candle, smooth, white, and perfect. You have spent the day, not with bees or with honey, but with their most sacred byproduct. You have transformed the bees' labor into a vessel for light. taking the stored energy of a million flowers and giving it the potential for a pure, unwavering flame that will illuminate the darkest corners of the church. After the intense, focused heat of the chandlery, the next day brings a welcome change of scenery. Brother Anselm leads you not to the workshop or the apiary, but to a different part of the monastery, a place you haven't seen before. He unlatches a heavy oak door in a shadowy part of the cloister and gestures for you to precede him down a set of steep worn stone steps. As you descend, the air grows cool and damp, carrying the earthy, sweet smell of fermentation and damp stone. You have entered the monastery's cellars. The only light comes from the single lantern Anselm is carrying, its flickering flame casting long, dancing shadows that make the rows of barrels lining the walls look like sleeping giants. This is where the monastery's ale is brewed and its cider is stored. But you are here for something special, the final, glorious transformation of the bee's hard work. Today, you are going to brew Mead, a simple alcoholic beverage made by fermenting honey with water, is quite possibly the oldest fermented drink in human history, predating both wine and beer. For a medieval monastery, in a place like England, where grapes for wine were difficult to grow, mead was a vital and treasured drink. It was used for celebrating feast days, for welcoming important guests, and for its supposed medicinal properties. Anselm, it turns out, is not just the keeper of the bees. He is also the keeper of their spirit in liquid form. He leads you to a corner of the cellar, where several enormous, open-topped wooden tuns stand waiting. They are scrubbed clean, their interiors pale and smelling faintly of honey and yeast. Your first task is surprisingly physical. Anselm points to the large pots of honey you helped process days ago, and then to a large wooden bucket. You spend the next hour hauling honey from the workshop down to the cellar. It's heavy, sticky work, and the stone steps are treacherous in the dim light. By the time you're done, you have a new respect for the sheer physical labor that underpinned this quiet, contemplative life. Next comes the water. Anselm is incredibly particular about this. A young novice, Brother Michael, the same one who greeted you on your first day, helps you haul buckets of water, not from the main well, but from a specific spring on the far side of the monastery grounds, one that Anselm insists provides the purest, sweetest water. This is a widely accepted historical fact of brewing any kind. The quality of the water is paramount. Brewers, then and now, understood that the unique mineral content of their local water source had a profound impact on the final taste of their product. With the honey and water in the tun, Anselm himself performs the most crucial step, the mixing. Using a wooden paddle almost as tall as he is, he begins to stir the mixture, a slow, steady, rhythmic motion. He is dissolving the thick, viscous honey into the water, creating what is known as the must. He continues this for what seems like an eternity, his movements never faltering. He gestures for you to take a turn. The paddle is heavy, and the mixture is thick and resistant. It's hard work, but there's a hypnotic quality to the slow, circular motion. Once the must is mixed to his satisfaction, it is time for the magic ingredient, the yeast. But there is no packet of dried yeast to be found here. This is the quirky, lesser-known side of ancient brewing. Anselm retrieves a small, bubbling, yeasty-smelling crock from a cool shelf. This is his barm, a living culture of wild yeast that has been kept alive and nurtured for generations. Passed down from the previous mead maker, he scoops a ladleful of the frothy, living liquid and gently pours it into the must, a process that feels more like a sacred anointing than a simple recipe step. He is introducing life into the mixture. The weather turns. A slow, steady autumn rain begins to fall, draping the monastery in a veil of gray mist and turning the stone walkways dark and slick. The air grows colder, and the bees, sensing the change in seasons, stay huddled in their hives. The frantic energy of summer has given way to a more subdued, indoor rhythm. There is no work to be done in the apiary. and the cellars are left to the quiet magic of fermentation. Asterisk on one such rainy afternoon, when the rhythmic drumming of water on the slate roof is the only sound, Brother Anselm finds you a new task. He leads you away from the practical, working parts of the monastery and into its intellectual and spiritual heart. The scriptorium. The room is surprisingly bright, even on this gloomy day. It's on the second floor, with a row of high arched windows that face south to catch the maximum amount of daylight. The air smells of old parchment, ink, and the faint, sweet scent of beeswax from the candles that will provide light when the sun fails. This is where the monastery's monks copy and create their beautiful illuminated manuscripts, the books that are the lifeblood of their intellectual and religious world. Asterisk, but you are not here to copy the Gospels. Anselm leads you to a small, secluded alcove, where a single, heavy book is laid open on a slanted wooden desk. The book is huge, its pages made not of paper, but of vellum, a fine, creamy parchment made from calfskin. The text is written in a dense, dark Latin script, but it is the illustrations that catch your eye. They are vibrant, jewel-toned paintings, decorated with shimmering gold leaf. This is a bestiary, a medieval book of beasts, both real and imaginary. Asterisk Anselm points to the open page. The illustration depicts a perfect, golden straw skep, almost identical to the ones you have been working with. Swirling around it are a host of beautifully rendered bees. He then points to the Latin text beside it. He knows you cannot read it, but he wants you to understand the context of his work. The bees were not just livestock to these monks. They were creatures of immense symbolic importance. Asterisk, this is a widely accepted historical fact in Christian symbolism. The honeybee was a powerful and multifaceted emblem. The bee was seen as a symbol of chastity and purity, as it was believed incorrectly, of course, to reproduce without physical union. The hive was a metaphor for the monastery itself, well-ordered, chaste community, working together harmoniously under a single ruler, the queen bee, which they often referred to as a king, all laboring to produce sweetness, honey, and light wax. The bee was industrious, courageous in defense of its home, and utterly loyal. It was, in short, the perfect tiny monk. Asterisk Anselm turns the heavy page. Here you see a lesser known, and rather quirky, aspect of the bee's place in medieval thought. The next illustration shows a saint, his hand raised in blessing over a skep, while a demon flees in the opposite direction. This is Saint Ambrose of Milan, one of the patron saints of beekeeping. Legend has it that when Ambrose was an infant, a swarm of bees landed on his face and flew into his mouth without harming him, leaving behind a single drop of honey. This was taken as a sign of his future eloquence, his honeyed words. The bee became a symbol of divine blessing and a ward against evil. To have a thriving apiary was not just a sign of a skilled beekeeper, but of God's favor upon the monastery. Asterisk, you spend the afternoon slowly, carefully turning the pages of the bestiary and other books. Anselm brings you a copy of Virgil's Georgics, an ancient Roman text on agriculture that contains long passages on beekeeping, and a herbal, a book of medicinal plants, filled with recipes that use honey as a base. The scriptorium is silent, save for the scratching of a quill from a monk working in the main room and the soft patter of the rain on the windows. Asterisk, it's a completely different kind of work from what you've been doing. It's quiet, intellectual, and deeply historical. You are connecting the practical, hands-on knowledge you've gained in the apiary with the deep well of symbolism, faith, and ancient wisdom that informs it. You see illustrations of beekeepers using smokers and veils, a 1,000-year-old tradition captured in ink and gold. You see drawings of the waggle dance, interpreted not as a system of navigation, but as a joyful, divine ballet. Asterisk, historians still debate how these two worlds, the world of practical, observational science, and the world of deep, Allegorical faith coexisted in the medieval mind. Did a monk like Anselm, when he saw a swarm, think first of the potential loss of honey, or of the powerful metaphor for the Christian soul, leaving the body to find a home in heaven? The answer is likely that he thought of both, simultaneously and without contradiction. For him, the physical and the metaphysical were not separate realms. The world was a book written by God, and the bees were a particularly beautiful and instructive chapter. Asterisk, as the light begins to fail. Another monk comes and begins to light the candles in the scriptorium. The small steady flames push back the growing gloom, their golden light making the gold leaf on the manuscript pages shimmer and dance. The light is clean and pure, and the room is filled with the gentle scent of the beeswax you helped to render. You look from the flame of the candle to the illustration of the bee on the page, and then to Brother Anselm, who was watching the rain fall outside the window. In that moment, everything connects. The garden, the hive, the press, the candle. It is a perfect, unbroken circle of work, nature, and faith. Asterisk, the rain eventually passes, leaving the world washed clean and the air crisp with the coming of winter. The last of the autumn flowers have faded, and the leaves on the old apple tree have turned a brilliant, fiery gold before falling to the damp earth. The energetic, joyful hum of the apiary has subsided, replaced by a low, constant, almost mournful drone. The bees' season of endless work is over. Now begins their season of survival. Asterisk, your final major task as Brother Anselm's apprentice is to help prepare the apiary for winter's sleep. This is not a task of harvesting or creation, but one of care and protection. It is a quiet, methodical process, ensuring that the colonies that have given so much will have the best possible chance of enduring the long, cold months ahead. Asterisk, Anselm leads you out to the bee garden one last time. He is carrying a bucket of thick, wet clay mixed with straw. You carry a small flat piece of slate for each hive. The work begins with hefting the hives. Anselm approaches each skep and gently, carefully, lifts it an inch or two off its stand. He is not looking inside. He is feeling its weight. This is the simple, widely accepted historical method for judging a hive's winter readiness. A hive that feels heavy is a hive full of honey, its winter pantry well stocked. A hive that feels light is in trouble. Asterisk, one of the skeps, a smaller, younger colony, feels dangerously light to him. He gives a low grunt of concern. This is where the monastery's policy of non-wastefulness comes back to help the bees. He retrieves some of the bee bread, the pollen-packed comb. He set aside during the honey harvest and a small pot of honey. He carefully places this supplemental food inside the skep, giving the colony a vital boost of carbohydrates and protein to see them through the winter. It's a quiet act of reciprocity, giving back to the bees a small portion of what was taken. Asterisk, next comes the task of winterproofing. The beautiful woven straw of the skeps is a decent insulator, but it is not impervious to driving rain or the gnawing of a desperate mouse. You take the clan straw mixture medieval material known as dough band, begin to plaster it around the base of each skep. You smooth it into the bee bowl, sealing any cracks where drafts or predators might enter. Your hands are cold and caked in mud, but the work is satisfying. You are tucking each colony in for the winter, sealing them into their safe stone alcoves. Asterisk, Anselm then shows you a particularly quirky and clever bit of winter preparation. He takes one of the small, flat pieces of slate and places it so that it leans against the entrance of the hive. This creates a small, sheltered porch. It serves multiple purposes. It keeps driving snow and rain from blowing directly into the hive entrance. And, most importantly, it acts as a deterrent for mice who'd love to make their winter nests in the warm, food-filled interior of a beehive. This simple, elegant solution, a tiny slate awning, is a testament to centuries of careful observation of the threats facing a colony. Asterisk. You work your way down the row of hefting, feeding where necessary, and sealing. With each hive you tuck away, the garden grows quieter. The last few foraging bees have returned for good, and a profound stillness settles over the apiary. The village is closing its doors for the season. Historians still debate the mortality rates of bees in this period. Without modern medicines to treat diseases like mites or foul brood, winter was a precarious time. A particularly long or harsh winter could easily wipe out a significant portion of an apiary. Beekeepers like Anselm would have been all too familiar with the silence of a dead hive in the spring. This makes the care you are taking now all the more poignant. It is an act of hope, a gentle gamble against the coming cold. You are doing everything you can, based on the knowledge you have. And then you must surrender the outcome to the forces of nature and the resilience of the bees themselves. The day of your departure has arrived. It is a morning much like your first here, cold, misty, and profoundly quiet. You pack your few belongings, your modern clothes feeling strange and foreign after weeks in a simple linen tunic. Your hands are no longer soft. They are scratched from brambles, stained with propolis, and calloused from the weaver's awl and the mead maker's paddle. They are the hands of an apprentice. Before you leave, you seek out Brother Anselm one last time. You find him not in the workshop or the apiary, but in the monastery's church. It is the hour between lauds and prime, a time of private prayer. The church is vast, cold, and echoing. The only light comes from the tall, narrow windows, and a single bank of beeswax candles burning before the high altar. Their pure, steady flames cutting through the gloom. The air smells of cold stone, old wood, and the faint, sweet scent of that burning waxa, scent you now know, with an almost familial intimacy. Anselm is not praying. He is simply standing by the altar, replacing the burned-down candles with fresh ones, the ones you helped to make. He performs the task with the same gentle, unhurried reverence he applies to everything. He sees you approach, and his pale blue eyes hold a look of quiet understanding. There is no need for goodbyes. The rhythm of the monastery is one of comings and goings, and your part in it has come to its natural end. He finishes his task and gestures for you to follow him, not out of the church, but to a small side chapel. As you walk, the sound of the monks beginning their morning chant drifts from the choir. A low, hypnotic Gregorian hum that seems to be the very voice of the stones around you. This is the sound that has been the backdrop to your entire time here. The steady, rhythmic pulse of a life dedicated to something beyond the self. It is the human equivalent of the hum of the hive. Anselm leads you to the refectory, the long, simple hall where the monks take their meals in silence. He goes to a cupboard and brings back a small loaf of coarse, dark bread and a small clay pot of honey. The honey is a deep, rich amber, and you recognize it as the very honey you helped press and pour. He breaks the bread in two and gives you a piece. Then, he dips his own piece into the honey and eats it. He gestures for you to do the same. You dip the heavy bread into the pot. The honey is thick and fragrant, and it clings to the rough texture of the crumb. You take a bite. The bread is hearty, slightly sour, but the honey is a revelation. It is not just sweet. It is a complex explosion of flavors. You can taste the faint floral notes of the lavender, the sharpness of the thyme, the mellow sweetness of the clover from the bee garden. It is a perfect, liquid encapsulation of a place, of a season. It is the taste of the patient work you have witnessed and taken part in. This simple meal of bread and honey is the most profound and fitting farewell imaginable. This is a widely accepted historical reality. This combination was a staple, the fundamental food of sustenance and sweetness for much of the medieval world. As you eat, you think about the quiet purpose that fills this place. The monks' lives are a continuous loop of prayer and work, or each task, whether chanting the psalms or rendering beeswax, is seen as an act of devotion. There is no separation between the sacred and the mundane. The quirky detail you've finally come to understand is that Anselm's beekeeping is not his job. It is his prayer. His care for his bees is an expression of his faith, a living, breathing, buzzing form of worship. Asterisk, you finish your bread. Anselm takes the pot of honey and, with a piece of clean linen, wraps it carefully. He hands it to you. A gift to take with you on your journey. Asterisk, historians still wonder about the inner lives of men like Anselm. In a world without constant entertainment, without the endless distractions of modernity, what did they think about during the long, silent hours of their work? Did their minds wander? Or did they achieve a state of deep, focused presence? A mindfulness that we now strive to reclaim through apps and retreats. Standing here, in the quiet hall, sharing this simple meal with this silent, patient man, you feel you know the answer. His mind isn't empty. It's full. It is full of the bees, the weather, the turn of the seasons, the feel of the wax, the taste of the honey. His world is small, but his attention to it is infinite. Asterisk, he walks with you to the main gate. The same heavy oak door you entered weeks ago. Brother Michael is there, and he pulls back the heavy wooden bar. Anselm places a hand briefly on your shoulder, a gesture of profound weight from a man who communicates so little through touch. He gives one last, slow nod, and then he turns and shuffles back toward his workshop. A small, stooped figure in a brown habit, disappearing back into the quiet heart of his world. A world that will continue its slow, sweet, humming rhythm long after you are gone. Asterisk, you step through the gate, back into the world of muddy roads and endless horizons. The heavy door closes behind you with a solid, final thud. The silence that follows is different from the silence inside. It is an empty silence. You are alone, with a pot of honey in your pack and the faint, lingering hum of the monastery in your ears. A sound you know you will never forget. Asterisk, and so, your journey into the gentle, secret world of the monastery bees comes to a close. The path ahead leads you back to your own time, to your own world, but you carry the quiet rhythm of the abbey with you. You can feel the slow, meditative pace of weaving a screp, the patient turning of the honey press, the rhythmic dipping of a candle. Asterisk, let that peaceful rhythm slow your breathing now. Take a long, slow breath in, feeling the cool air, and let it go with a soft, gentle sigh. Let the tension in your shoulders and your jaw begin to melt away, just as the beeswax melted in the warm cauldron. There is nothing for you to do right now. No tasks to complete, no problems to solve. All the work is done. The hives are tucked in for the winter, safe and quiet. Asterisk, imagine the deep, resonant toll of the monastery bell, not as an alarm, but as a soft, reassuring sound that everything is as it should be. Let each gentle ring of that imaginary bell carry you a little deeper into comfort, a little further into rest. The quiet hum of the apiary has softened to a gentle murmur, a soothing, peaceful sound that rocks you slowly, gently toward sleep. You are safe, you are comfortable, and you can let go. The story is over, and now, it is time for your own quiet season of rest to begin.